somebody shooting over there.
What train do you think that was, Maury?
That sounds like one that should be in the shop getting repaired.
Do you want to try your hand?
No.
No?
No.
Because you were telling me that you could hear the sounds and you could tell which train it was that was coming
could.
in.
Yeah. Sure could.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't think that until you really dig into it and find out why. Because night after night after night, I'd hear and see those same people, the same trains.
Yeah.
And
was it because of the conductor, or was it because of that was the code that they were supposed to use?
No, that I could tell what locomotive it was by the sound of the locomotive's whistle. Mm-hmm. Just a little bit. Anybody else wouldn't catch it, but I'd heard it enough and known what the locomotives were, and then I could tell which engineer it was by how he pulled the cord on it.
You mean they didn't have one of these whistles?
No. They needed something a little bit more
louder.
substantial. Yeah.
Today we're in my backyard with Maury Whitney, and Maury is a railroad buff. He loves railroads, and I just think that he's got so much information that I'd really love to have him share with you. So, Maury, today we're on the Ashuelot Trail. It's now a walking trail. They use it for snowmobiling. They even have horses. You can go horseback riding through here. And people ride bikes. I'm on here almost every day, and I see the different seasons. I love looking at all the flowers and things like that. But as I look along, I'm always expecting that there's going to be a train coming. I know, it sounds weird, but there's no more railway here. No. There's no more tracks, and all of the ties have been thrown off to the side or done away with. Yeah. But I see, it's a wonderful path. What they've done is they've put hard pack down. Swanzey got a grant last year, and they've done quite a bit of work on it as well. And they've really tried to encourage people to walk along here. And so if you get a chance to come out, it's great because it's pretty level, actually. Yeah. There's not much of a grade because...
Well, that's one of the things when they built this railroad line. So I hear. I don't know if it's true or not, but so I hear through the grapevine or hearsay, whatever you want to call it. This line was put in shortly after the Cheshire Railroad was, and that was around 1850. Probably, I think, 1851 or 52 that this line finished up. And the bridge that we're sitting on here now, the top is wood, but the bottom, the base of it, is granite blocks. Like everywhere that they go, they would use the granite as best they could. And usually, as the line progressed, they would just look for outcroppings of granite to use and drill in and get it that way. That was saving the transportation costs. But to get back to what I was saying about the line at that time, this line from here to East Northfield and even further south than that, where it hooks into the Boston and Maine line that used to go to Brattleboro, they wanted people to use this line to go to Keene with because there are not any mountains that they have to cross over. And so, whereas one of the old 440s locomotives could come on this line and use just one, but if they had to pass through Troy and all the other sections there, they'd have to have two locomotives on it. So they tried to encourage people to run from Boston area or Worcester or wherever it was, end up in Greenfield or one of the Athol or there, and then get on this line to come north. But it really didn't work out. People they choose their own preference.
Right, like people in cars today.
Yeah. And then a lot of it came about because they got the line into Jaffrey, and that was right close to Monadnock, and that's where most of the people that came up this way wanted to go.
Right, for visiting.
And so this line itself was not really the passenger line that most railroads are. It was used mostly for freight. Mm-hmm. Now, since the line was built here, how many trains would you say been over over the ties, over the over the abutment that's downstairs.
I don't know, 40 or 50,000, I would think.
Well, you're half right.
Really?
Yeah, it's
Wow.
80.
Wow.
About 80,
Wow.
and that's a low estimate because you don't know how many extras came on or whatever,
Right,
but it's
right.
it's a good, and through the Cheshire in Keene. How about that one?
That's going to be higher. That's going to be way higher, like 300,000. I don't know.
Well, no, not quite.
No? Okay.
You're guessing pretty good.
Okay.
About 240,000 trains went across that.
Wow.
During 110 years.
Yeah.
That,
So you weren't here for the 110 years.
No,
but
no, I wish
you were
I
here
had
for
been.
a lot of it, though.
I wish I had
Yeah.
been here for the
Yeah.
110 years.
Yep, yep.
I mean, these lines were really something of to. Well, goodness, we got a partner here. These lines, when they were put in, were heavily traveled by passengers, and because at the time it was about 10 times. It was about 10 times faster.
Hi, puppy. Hi.
Puppy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was about 10 times faster than going by horse and buggy.
Right.
And you didn't have any upkeep, so all you had to do was get in your passenger car and sit there, and the train would take you wherever you wanted to go.
And so much faster.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yes. Yeah. 10 times faster.
Yep.
Yeah, because the train at that time, most of the speed limits were around 40 miles an hour, and the horse and buggy was about 4 miles an hour. And if you walked fast, you can make 4 miles an hour, but you get kind of tuck it out after a while.
Right.
I walked from Brattleboro one day just for the heck of it. I walked from Brattleboro to Keene. And,
Just for the heck of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did. I walked at 4 miles an hour, and it just, as you get a steady pace like that, it'll come out all right.
Yeah. Was there a train you could take back?
No, there wasn't a train. Well, that was another thing too. They wanted to get a line from Keene to Brattleboro, but the steep hills were so much that they couldn't do that. So then they tried to think about using this to get to Brattleboro, but it was kind of a roundabout.
Right, going through Northfield or whatever. Yeah.
But there were certain items that, like the woolens in West Swanzey, and there were at that time there were a lot of sheep raised in this area, and up until about the first part of the 1900s. And so the wool that didn't get to the local manufacturers went elsewhere, and they also sold a lot of sheep. A lot of Spanish Merino sheep that was raised here in New Hampshire and Vermont were shipped all over the world, and a good share of them went to Australia. And so that was the spreading of New England.
Yeah.
But this line per se by itself was really a second-hand line, but it did form its purpose.
Right.
But because it sprang up along, there's Winchester with the manufacturing in Winchester, and I'll tell you a little story about Winchester in a little bit. but and the down to Northfield, and then it ties back into Greenfield. But it got to the point where the local trains didn't run around as much because they couldn't haul. If they were hauling a train from say even Troy, New York to Boston, they couldn't be really bothered. The economy was such that they couldn't be bothered to stop that train and drop off cars, every place.
Right, it's all money generated.
Yeah,
right.
And so so this line kind of suffered, and by the 1930s, there wasn't much, and I don't know, there might be 2 freight trains a day, but we did at that time, starting around the early 1930s, I believe it was. We had a gasoline-powered, what we call the Tunaville trolley.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I traveled that many times with my mother, who had a sister who lived in West Swanzey. And I don't know, 10, 15 cents, we would get on the train and go from Keene Depot to West Swanzey.
Yep.
And the only thing it is, you had to know the timetable of
Right.
the train, because if you missed it on the way back, it was a long walk.
That's right, right, that's right.
Well, the tuna-filled trolley
Yeah.
used to make, I think, 2 trips a day, and just for passengers. What it was, I can't remember if it was, I think it was an Alco, gasoline powered single car. And it wouldn't have much room for more than probably 30 passengers at the most. But you'd be able to take it and go to West Swansea, or to go to Winchester, and all the little places, Westport.
Pick up all the blankets and woolen mills.
Or if you had a cottage around Forest Lake down there, it would stop and let you off there, so that you'd have to walk the rest of the way. But on the way home, all of the workers from the Winchester tannery were getting on the trolley to come back to Keene. And I don't know if you've ever been in the tannery, but it's not the
It's stinky
sweetest,
and,
the sweetest smelling stuff. So you'd ride with them. You'd ride with those guys.
Could they have their own car? Can they sit in the back?
No, there was no. To my knowledge, there was no discrimination at that point. And they also. They also would go to work in the morning and take the well, like we called it, Tunaville trolley. So that made about two trips a day.
Yep.
And in between that, you'd have a freight, what they call a local freight, and most of them, they wouldn't be on schedule, so you really wouldn't know exactly when they were coming through.
So when they're not on schedule, how do you make it sure that nobody's going to hit each other? Is there another? I mean, there must be other railroads that are going back.
No, not on this line until I think it was about 1877, somewhere in there, that the line was leased out to the Connecticut River Railroad. And the reason for that was because they had on occasions, they had numerous washouts between Bells Falls and Brattleboro. And so that would shut down the Central Vermont Railway over there, or even BM, if it was the time that BM was there. It would shut down that line, so what they would do is they would, usually the lines that go up through Putney, up that way, are usually about 117 cars. Well, they had to split them up, and probably out of the 117 cars, they'd have to have 3 trains. They'd have to have 3 locomotives, and it was really kind of interesting to watch what the locomotives that they had on it. I saw one weird-looking locomotive. It was a 064.
Okay, so what is an 064?
Okay,
for anybody that doesn't understand what these are.
The designation is the wheel alignment. There's a dolly of wheels in the front. If there's 2, then it's a 264. If there are 4 up there, then it's a 464. And then the 6, the middle number, it could be an 8, a 2, 4, 6, or 8. On the drive wheels, and then the last is the trailing pilot that supports the tail end of the locomotive. And there's a small function of the front pilots by helping the the steering of the driving wheels, and it won't let the train really zag out of place on some of the curves and whatnot. But the line between here and Bellows Falls, for them to get back on the right track up there, was such that they couldn't take the long trains, and the weight was such. Up until, well, probably up until 1890, the 440s, which are 4 front pilot wheels and 4 drive wheels, and no wheels on the trailing pilot, would have to come up here with two locomotives to get over and they would
hills,
they wouldn't, even the 2 of them wouldn't be able to get much more than probably 17 pieces of rolling stock, 17 cars. And but they would break these these trains up over in Vernon, or sometimes even in Greenfield, and they would come up this line up to Keene, and then go up through Cheshire line to Bellows Falls.
Because I remember even as a little kid waiting for those train line, the trains to go through, and
Yeah.
it seemed like it went on forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of fun though, because you never, as being a
Yeah.
kid, I never got to see that many trains. So when I got to see a train, it was interesting.
Yeah. Well, what I've always been interested in, and it started as a kid, my folks had some, kind of getting away from this line, but my folks had some relatives that were down in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And that's right next to the Hoosick Tunnel. And we used to, while my folks were visiting with the relatives, us kids, we'd go down and sit on the bank of next to the Hoosick Tunnel and watch all of the train traffic coming in and out. And it was really interesting. And at that time, I got to be a road name person rather than just watching so many cars and boxcars or gondolas or whatever going by. And so I've always been interested in seeing what road name the boxcars or gondolas or whatever were on. And during the Second World War, you could find them from you could just about every line in the whole country.
So when the boxes came into the different yards,
Now,
they could put some on and not some, just like baggage kind of? Is that what they would do, or how would that work?
well, what they do is they if you have a car that's going to a certain destination, they would get it to a place where they're not going any further than that, but it has to be picked up by the next freight that goes in that direction. And so it was quite a process, really, of directing all of the freight yards, and some places in the country had humongous freight yards. This little line right here had a freight yard and sidings in West Swanzey, and I think they had a siding. I don't know if they had a depot there, but I think they had a little house there at Sawyer's Crossing. I might be wrong on that, but I've heard it said that
It looks like there could have been one.
Yeah,
honestly, yeah.
there was a siding there, and then of course as you go on, I think the next one down would be West Swansea, and they had quite a little yard if you were looking from where the old depot was in West Swansea. It's all been taken over now by the mill. What was that, about 40 years ago? They built the addition on the mill, and to the left or to the east of the depot, there were probably about 5 or 6 sidings right in that land right there. They had, I think they had a shoe shop there. They had Frazier's in the more recent times, but there was quite a little bit of industry there, and then there was the shipping also from the woolen mill, which was there for, I think, almost the same time the railroad came in. They built the mill there.
Yeah, I mean, when they have the mill, they got to get the stuff out, so they're like, "Come on over here, we'd like you to come."
And it was, and then I think they had one siding in Westport. And there again, I don't recall ever seeing a depot there, but there might have been. And some of those places like that, where they just had a little bit of a shack for you to stand in and get out of the rain.
Right. Yep.
But and then south from Westport would be into Winchester, and I think Winchester had about 4 sidings there for the tannery and other industries that were there. I can't recall all the industries that were in Winchester. It's changed so much. And but they ran what they call a mixed train. It would be a freight train sometimes, and with one passenger car on the tail end of it, and that would constitute their carrying passengers at the same time. Now, when this line was abandoned, before it was abandoned, about 15 years before it was abandoned, they wanted to do away with their passenger line because nobody's riding the train. And so the authorities wouldn't allow it because they're supposed to provide the transportation for the public, and they had to provide something for them to ride in. So what they did, the last of the running on this line here was again a mixed train, but it didn't have a passenger car. The only thing they kept it open, they kept a comin, which is a caboose. They kept the caboose on the tail end of it. And man, if I had known that at the time, I would have been right there, because every time they had to stop and deliver a car at different places, I'd be riding all over the
Yeah,
all over the place,
right,
on the sidings and whatnot. But that's how they got around the mandate that they had to provide transportation for the public, and that indeed really drove a lot of, not only here but everywhere, drove a lot of railroads, small railroads, into oblivion, because they just couldn't afford to
right,
keep
right.
it going.
Yeah, and it's really too bad that we couldn't have kept that going, because as much as we do love having this trail to run on or to use, the railroads did keep costs down, even though they thought it was more expensive then. If you think about all of the cars that we have now and all of the fuel that we use, it could be so much more efficient by doing something like that.
I think CSX televises a commercial on CSX. They say that they can transport a ton of goods. I think it's a ton of goods, 500 miles on 1 gallon of fuel. And but believe me, we're not going back to the
No,
train,
I know.
because people can't walk 15 steps today.
Right. Right. And you want to be there. You want to be there now, and you want to be there, not when the train
and
comes through.
it's the funniest thing. They'll drive up. It's a little bit off the subject, but people drive around Central Square and look for a parking space, and it has to be right in front of where they want to go.
Right.
But yet they'll go to the supermarkets that are Price Choppers, and they'll pack 200 feet away
right.
from.
I know. Yeah.
But no, this it's wonderful that they've kept this this line in shape, and as you can see, it's flat and level, and it wouldn't take an awful lot of steam to put down through here.
Right.
But you can also see that the overhead trees and stuff haven't been trimmed probably since the
40s and 50s, you think?
Well, I would say it might be 60. The tree that's behind me here has several trunks, and I attribute that to the fact that the last time the railroad was trimmed from trees and saplings, that tree was probably cut down as a stump that might be a foot 18 inches high.
Yeah. So it's been like 50 or 60 years.
So it's been long enough so that that tree has sprouted and grown that much there.
Yeah, because that's one thing that I do think about as well.
Yeah.
Is all this property that we're seeing here, a lot of this was probably farmland.
Oh yes.
And there probably weren't hardly any of these trees here.
No.
At that time, it's beautiful walking now, but.
Well, you see, they can't allow the trees to grow this way.
Right.
Because their root systems are going to undermine the track.
Right. Well, there's something undermining the track right now.
Oh yeah.
But you know what it is? Little chipmunks.
Oh yeah.
There's little chipmunks and little moles
Yeah.
that dig little holes in the trail here.
Yeah.
So that is the only thing that you do have to watch out for, and it's nothing we can do anything about. But there are little chipmunks that dig holes, because my dogs go crazy.
Yeah, they're not foxholes nor
They look
prairie
like it
prairie
sometimes,
dogs. They're chip holes.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it is beautiful walking through here, but there are a lot of trees on the sides that, and also if they were using coal or fire, like firewood or something like that, you'd have to be careful about having fires too, because I'm sure there must have been fires.
Yes. Up until 1900s, when it was about the time most everybody turned over to coal or oil, and there weren't too many oilers, but most went to coal. And they, those old 440 locomotives have a big triangular stack on them. Well, that's really what is known as a spark arrestor.
Ah,
And
it's not just pretty.
No,
Yeah.
no. I mean, it was necessity to
Right.
have that, because traveling like today, if
Mm-hmm.
you were traveling through here with a wood burning locomotive, you'd be spitting out sparks and whatnot, and some of it might even come out with the firebox and down onto the ground. But so I mean, they had to keep keep things turned back. And it's nice to have the trees close by,
Right.
but these like this here, if we have a storm, these couldn't come down.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and so any railroad that's their livelihood, they'd have to remove those trees because it's endangering their property.
Right.
The worst part of it is we have people that are trying to preserve bridges such as this,
Mm-hmm.
and they're having a tough time clearing the trees away from the structures so that you can see them, because the only trees that they can remove are the ones that are damaging the
structure.
You know, the structure that's
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And but no, there were fires. It was quite a hazard in the early, well, up until about 1910, I'd say. There were head-on collisions and, you know, and tail-end
all kinds
collisions.
of stuff, I'm sure.
And that's what Casey Jones hit. He had a he hit a he hit the tail end of a train that was pulling onto a siding, and that that was well known. Casey Jones.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you know, Maury, it's a half an hour already.
Half an hour?
I know, we've
Yeah,
been
there you
talking
go.
for
Yeah.
half an hour, and you feel like you've been talking for 5 minutes.
Yeah, usually it's an hour and I have to close off.
Shoot, you're done.
Okay.
So today we've been in my backyard with Maury Whitney, and I'm hoping that Maury will come back again, because we've got a lot more to talk about.
Anytime I'm
Yeah.
available.
Yeah, that sounds great. So today we've been in my backyard. If you want to get a hold of us, you can email us at inmybackyardch8@gmail.com and give us your ideas, suggestions. If you want to be a guest, let us know. If you have a really interesting topic like railroads in Cheshire
gosh.
County,
Yeah.
let us know. And we'd be happy to think about it and possibly do a show. So join us again, please, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in my backyard.